Okay, so let us begin. I'll begin with the salutation to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so good morning, everybody here in New York. It's a very rainy morning, continuing from yesterday. And so we're continuing now. We're coming pretty much to the end of the Book of Fives in the Anguttara Nikaya. I don't know how many years ago we started this book. And so now we come to Sutta number 200, which is the theme of the sutta is escape. And here the Buddha is going to be speaking about it's called five elements of escape, or five means of escape, and five things to which one escapes. And first, I want to say a few words about this word. I want to say a few words about the word translated as escape, because it can give rise to serious misunderstandings about the Dhamma. Do you see my notes file?
Yes, Bhante.
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so the Pali word translated as escape is nisarana. And when we translate this as escape, it gives rise to sort of the misunderstanding or distorted understanding that Buddhism is a form of escapism. And so the way I understand escapism means that you don't really want to look at a problem face on, but you sort of push the problem away from the focus of your awareness. You don't look at a problem, but instead you leave the problem unsolved and you indulge in some other form of distraction that is going to engage the mind so that you don't have to look at the problems you're facing. So say somebody has a lot of, say, conflicts and disagreements and hostility within their family life. And so they might go to the bar and start drinking, or hang out with friends that are using drugs and start using drugs. That is a form of escapism. Or maybe somebody is working at a dull, boring job, and they don't get any pleasure during the week. So when the weekend comes around, then they might go to, I don't know, to any kind of place of entertainment in order to just let their mind loose and forget about the boredom of their workaday life. But if you're in, say, a movie theater and somebody calls out seriously that the theater is on fire, and then you run for the exit signs, that isn't escapism, but that is seeking a real form of escape, a place of safety, a place of security, a place free from the danger of that burning movie theater. Okay, so the word nisarana is actually a prefix form of the word sarana. And does anybody recognize the word sarana? Where have you seen the word sarana before?
Saranam gacchami.
Exactly. So when we go for refuge, we are going Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. So we are going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. And so the word sarana, it's based on the verb sarati, which means literally it means to run. And so you are running, in this case, in the case of taking refuge, you are running to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha as a place of safety, the ones who show us the place of safety. And there's another familiar word based on the verb sarati, sangsarati. And can anybody tell what this word means? It's related to, most people will know the noun. That's
Hello?
Bhante, can you please make the screen bigger? I can't see.
okay.
Thank you.
Actually, if you can make the window full screen, we would be able to. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the verb sangsarati, and you should be able to guess the meaning of this. Does it look like another word you might be familiar with?
Samsara.
Samsara.
Exactly. So the verb sangsarati means to continue running, to go running on. And so from the verb sangsarati, we get the noun samsara. So samsara is literally the running on, we could say aimlessly, continuously, moving from life to life. And so the same verb, sangsarati, gives us the noun nisarana. I don't know if there's a verb, nisarati. Probably there is, though I don't recognize it offhand. But if there is such a verb, it would give us the noun sangsarati. It would give us the noun nisarana, which is from the prefix nir, or actually in Sanskrit, would be ni, which gives the sense of out, and sarana. So sarana, nisarana, is literally the running out, but we could even maybe render it the release or emancipation. But early translators started to use the word escape, and so I've been following them in using escape. Okay, so now we have these 5 elements of escape. That's not much better. Let me increase. Okay, how is the point size? Yeah, I see that according to the commentary, it actually uses an adjectival form, nisaraniya, which is an adjective based on nisarana. So it's nisaraniya dhatuyo. Okay, so we have 5 elements of escape. And what are the 5? So we're going to have now a sequential presentation. And so here we start off with the case of a monk, or it could be any practitioner, who is attending to sensual pleasures. And now this is a little bit risky. It's not that a monk who is a relative beginner is going to start attending to sensual pleasures. Of course, to do so could be rather risky, in that if you start without having a solid, well-established mind in renunciation, if you start attending to sensual pleasures, then the mind is likely to get entangled in the lust and craving for sensual pleasures. So the commentary clarifies in the note. So I don't know if I have to agree that I would agree with the commentary 100%, but the commentary says, having emerged from jhana on an unattractive object, the monk sends his mind in the direction of sensual pleasures for the purpose of investigating them. And then the sub-commentary says that the monk does not attend to sensual pleasures in the sense that he's overcome by defilement. Rather, he investigates, my mind is now fixed in renunciation. Why do sensual thoughts arise? Okay, but the way I would see this, that maybe it's not necessarily the case that the practitioner has to be one who is already established in the jhanas. But he's already practiced sufficiently so that the mind has a strong, say, sense of detachment from sensual pleasures, a strong sense of viraga, of dispassion. And so when one, with a mind like that, then when one turns the mind to sensual pleasures just to see what one's response will be, how one will respond if one looks upon sensual pleasures, then the mind does not launch out upon them and become placid or calm, settled, and focused on them. So the mind doesn't, let's say the mind doesn't get engaged or entangled in this craving for sensual pleasures. So when the mind just turns to look at sensual pleasures, then there comes almost a spontaneous and immediate sense of maybe disenchantment with them, lack of interest in them, dispassion towards them. Okay, but then when the mind turns or tends to renunciation, then the mind launches out upon it and becomes placid, settled, and focused on renunciation. And then the mind is well departed from sensual pleasures. It's well developed, well emerged, well liberated, and well detached from sensual pleasures. And then he is freed from those taints. These are the asavas that arise conditioned by sensual pleasures. In other words, the mind is getting free from the asava, the taint of sensual craving. And then one doesn't feel that kind of feeling. That would be the feeling of pleasure connected with sensual objects. And so this is declared to be the escape, the element of escape from sensual pleasures. Namely, we could say, namely, that escape is renunciation. And then I was doing a little reflection on what are the bases that we can practice, the themes for reflection that we could practice in our regular everyday life in order to incline the mind to renunciation. Yeah, there's a beautiful expression that often comes in the text that the mind inclines to renunciation, slopes to renunciation, slants to renunciation, or we could even say flows to renunciation. And so what are some of the themes that one could use? Themes for reflection, for examination, for a kind of contemplative meditation or discursive meditation to strengthen this tendency towards the renunciation of sensual pleasures. And so I brought in a few of the ideas or themes that we find mentioned here and there in the suttas. So one is the reflection on the disadvantages or drawbacks or dangers of sensual pleasures. And so if you want to examine this for yourself in greater detail, I refer to two suttas that deal in some degree of detail with the drawback of sensual pleasures. Actually, they're both in the Majjhima Nikaya. One is number 54, which elaborates upon a number of similes to show the disadvantages or dangers of sensual pleasures. And some of these similes are rather strong. So we have to remember that the Buddha here is speaking to monastics who have given up the worldly life in order to pursue liberation. So he uses these, but actually in the sutta number 54, he's speaking at that time to a householder who thinks he's a renunciant. And so the Buddha wants to sort of dispel his false pride that he's living a life of renunciation. And so the Buddha brings in these similes for the dangers of sensual pleasures. Let me see if I can think of them offhand, or at least a few offhand. So sensual pleasures, he says, it's like a meatless chain of bones thrown outside a butcher shop. So we have a butcher who is preparing like meat for sale, and so he cuts up a carcass of maybe a cow, and then he takes the pieces of meat and hangs them up in his shop window. And then he takes this is the way it's done in ancient India, takes the bones and just throws them outside the shop. And then a bunch of dogs, street dogs, come and run towards the chain of bones, trying to find something to eat. And there are only these little strips of meat left on the bones, and the dogs are fighting each other. I'll get something to eat. I'll get something to eat. But there's very little except bones. Another simile is that of a little similar to that one. It's like a crow, like there's a piece of meat on the side of the road, and then one crow comes flying down, picks up the piece of meat with its claws, and goes flying up into the sky. And then a bunch of other crows want to get the meat, and so they start attacking the first crow, and they're fighting in the sky over that piece of meat. And so that's illustrating the way sensual pleasures become an object of conflict and violence and harm. Another simile is is that of a man falls asleep and goes into a dream. He has a dream in which he is walking through a beautiful garden with lovely trees, nice ponds, beautiful flowers and bushes. He's enjoying the beautiful garden. And then he wakes up and he finds he's just living in his little apartment, maybe on the streets of Calcutta or New Delhi, with a lot of pollution in the air, these vehicles going by. I'm elaborating in my own way. These tuk-tuk vehicles making a lot of noise, and one apartment upon another apartment. The streets are full of people, no beautiful gardens. So that is like sensual pleasures, just a beautiful illusion, but nothing really satisfying. Okay, so we don't want to lose too much time on one theme. So that is reflecting on the disadvantages or drawbacks of sensual pleasures. Then another way, think to incline the mind to renunciation is the reflection on death, or you can reflect more broadly on old age, sickness, and death. And when you do this, then the mind starts to lose, because when you're in the prime of life, healthy, strong, vigorous, then you feel you can just indulge freely in sensual pleasures and don't have to think about anything that lies beyond the immediate moment. But if you're in the prime of life, strong and healthy, and then you reflect on old age, sickness, and death, then you'll see that you might fully enjoy sensual pleasures now, but this is what you're going to have to face in the future. And then you start to lose interest in those sensual pleasures and turn the mind to renunciation. Another theme for reflection is that on impermanence, in the sense that there must be parting and separation from everyone and everything you love. And so now you're enjoying let's say, a sensual relationship with somebody, but at some point there's going to be parting and separation from that person. Another theme is meditation on the unattractive nature of the body. This we did on the last retreat, the 32 parts of the body. I've gone over that a number of times. And then more positively, reflections on the blessings of renunciation, how delightful it is to live a life of simplicity, a life where the mind is not entangled in sort of the fever and burning and affliction of sensual indulgence, a life of simplicity, contentment, where you can enjoy living a fairly solitary life, a fairly secluded life, and how through renunciation you have more time and energy to devote to your meditation practice so that you could achieve those blissful states that lie beyond the sensual domain, beyond the sphere of sensual pleasures. And so this is what you're doing when you're attending to renunciation. And here, according to the commentarial way of explanation, what is meant by this higher level of renunciation is the states of the jhanas, the meditative absorptions, the states of deep samadhi, where, if you remember the formula for the jhanas, vivicheva kamehi, vivicha akusalehi, dhammehi, that the mind is secluded from sensual pleasures, detached from sensual pleasures, detached from unwholesome states. And it's through that detachment that the mind launches out towards the jhanas, but not only seeing the danger of sensual pleasures, but delighting in purity, and particularly delighting in the elation and bliss that lie beyond sensual pleasures. This would be the piti sukha of the first jhana, or the first and we actually. Okay, so this is the escape from sensual pleasures, or also you could say the escape from sensual desires. Okay, now we come to the second element of escape. And so this will be, here is translated as benevolence. Well, I'll come to that. Let us just go through the text. Okay, so when a monk, or let's say any practitioner, is attending to ill will. So you're not letting your mind be overcome by ill will, anger, or hostility, but you're just reflecting on it, examining it. So when you bring up ill will in the mind, this would be, again, anger, resentment, hostility, displeasure, antagonism, resentment, and so forth. The mind doesn't launch out upon it and settle upon it. But now instead, you turn the mind to, here's translated benevolence. Now I don't like this. It's too Latinate. But we could use a simpler English expression, goodwill. In Pali, it's abhyapada, the absence of bhyapada. Bhyapada is ill will. Abhyapada is the absence of ill will or goodwill. Then the mind launches out upon it and settles upon it. And the mind becomes well departed, well developed, well emerged, well liberated from it, and well detached from ill will. And so this goodwill is really, in effect, it's a synonym for metta or maitri, loving kindness. So let us see some of the ways to, first, to turn the mind away from ill will, because often, in order to develop the positive quality, one has to begin by finding the faults in the unwholesome quality and seeing the drawbacks in that unwholesome quality in order to generate the motivation that will push the mind away from it and towards the corresponding good quality. And so the classical texts on the meditation of loving kindness always say, before you actually set out to develop the positive quality of loving kindness, you should reflect on the dangers, the drawbacks, the disadvantages of ill will. Okay, so there are a number of suttas that give us, that enumerate some of the dangers in ill will. This is from the Book of Seven, in Gottara Nikaya, Book of Sevens. Number 64. Yeah, so I just took the verse at the end of the sutta. And so the sutta explains that when you get angry, when you have a lot of ill will in the mind, then the features become sort of distorted, and the facial features become disagreeable, even you become ugly. If you see a person who's often angry and resentful, you see a lot of like bad wrinkles in the face, and the facial features look tight and tense, and even a kind of aggression sort of streams out from the eyes of that person. And then the person sleeps badly, and then having gained some benefit, you use it in unwholesome ways so that that benefit turns out ultimately to be harmful. So you get, maybe in some way you get wealthy, but you use that wealth in ways, maybe dishonest ways, to maybe launch some harmful projects, and then it's going to come back, bounce back, and be harmful to you in turn. And then the angry person, wounded in body and speech, incurs the loss of wealth. I have to say, I don't know whether this is really so true today. It seems that there are a lot of hateful, aggressive people seething with ill will who manage to accumulate a lot of wealth, but then they use that wealth in harmful ways. Maybe they use it for campaign contributions in order to promote the election of politicians who are just going to create harm for the multitudes of people and then use their political power to gain benefits for their wealthy sponsors, their wealthy supporters. You know, that's part of the political crisis that we're facing today in this country. Okay, then the person given to frequent anger gets a bad reputation. Other people speak badly about that person, and the person will lose friends and loved ones, and everyone wants to avoid them. So these are some of the disadvantages of ill will, anger, hatred. And then you can reflect on the blessings of goodwill or loving kindness. If you have a person of loving kindness, people like them. They feel spontaneously drawn to that person. And so you get a lot of friends. People will have trust in a person of goodwill. They will come to consult them to get your advice. When you're in trouble, they'll turn to you for help. Of course, you want to, if you like to keep in solitude, you might want to avoid that. But anyway, it's good to radiate this goodwill and loving kindness. And then even your thoughts will bring benefits to your community and the world, your thoughts, your actions, your words. And so when you generate this, when you do these reflections on the dangers of ill will, you reflect on the blessings of goodwill or loving kindness. This will incline the mind towards loving kindness, towards goodwill. And then it becomes much easier when you do the meditation of loving kindness to gain success in that meditation. So you find enjoyment in the meditation of loving kindness, and the mind settles into it, and you become, the whole body and mind become filled with the beautiful vibrations of loving kindness. And so that is the escape from ill will. That is benevolence, goodwill, or we could say metta, loving kindness. Okay, then we turn to the third element of escape. And this will be, the third element of escape will be non-harming, which in effect is the condition for, and maybe you could say a manifestation of, compassion. And so in this case, we have the monk representing any practitioner turns the mind to the idea of harming others. And let me just bring in the Pali word here first for harming. So the Pali word for non-harming is avihingsa, and this is the opposite of harming, which is vihingsa. And in effect, maybe some of you are familiar with the word ahimsa. You can see it's also a Pali Sanskrit word. In effect, it's really the same thing as vihingsa. Both V and the prefix indicate the absence of something. So ahimsa became popularized, I think, through the actions or the attitudes, the agenda of Mahatma Gandhi. But Mahatma Gandhi really picked up the philosophy of ahimsa from Jainism, and Buddhism was very similar to Jainism, but the Buddha didn't use the word ahimsa, but he used the word vihimsa. Okay, so when you turn to the idea of harming, of injuring others, whether by way of body or speech, then the mind does not launch out upon that. The mind doesn't settle upon it, but turns away from it. But then when you attend to the idea of non-harming, of harmlessness, the mind launches out upon it and settles upon it and becomes focused on it. And as I said, non-harming is in a way the precondition, the prerequisite, the supporting condition for compassion. And so what are some of the ways that one can turn the mind towards some of the ways that we practice non-harming as I said, as a supporting condition for the meditation of compassion. So by way of body first, when you undertake the precepts, especially the precepts not to kill, not to steal, and maybe we could add not to use intoxicants. Because when you use intoxicants, particularly liquor, then you easily maybe turn to acts of harming or violence. People who are given to the use of intoxicants, especially liquor, often can become violent and engage in aggressive behavior. Then by way of speech, you undertake the ethical training not to utter divisive speech and not to speak rough, harsh, or angry words. So when you train by way of body or speech in non-harming, then you're preparing the mind to develop the quality of non-harming. And when the mind develops for the mind to develop the quality of non-harming, you can take that further by cultivating compassion. Through compassion, you think of the suffering of sentient beings, maybe particularly human beings, people who are suffering from hunger, from homelessness, from poverty, and nowadays from the disasters of climate disasters, people suffering from war and conflict in Ukraine, now in Armenia, in Sudan, in Myanmar, so much violence. And you think of all of this violence, harm, and suffering in the world, and you let it sink in so that your heart shakes with the suffering of others. And then you form the determination not to inflict any harm or suffering on others. And by cultivating compassion in a deep meditative level, you could even reach the jhanic attainments through compassion. Okay, so this is the third element of escape, that is non-harming, harmlessness, or compassion is the escape from ill will. Is the escape from harmfulness. Okay, and all of these three states mentioned here, three levels, the three types of elements of escape: the escape from sensual pleasures, the escape from ill will, the escape from harming. These elements of escape can occur at the level of the jhanas. So through detachment from sensual pleasures, you can enter the 4 jhanas. Through the element of loving kindness, according to the tradition, you can attain the 3 lower jhanas. Through the element of non-harming or compassion, again, you can develop the 3 lower jhanas. But then after you master the 3 lower jhanas, then you can use one of the other meditation subjects that will bring the attainment of the 4th jhana. So in this way, you've attained the 4 jhanas, the 4 deep absorptions. And those jhanic attainments are said to still pertain to the realm of form. Let me just put in. So this is the technical language. Rupa Vachara. That is, even the jhanic attainments, these deep samadhis, pertain to the sphere of material form. And if one masters any of the 4 jhanas, without going further to insight, when death takes place, the mind, through the force of the jhanic meditation, will take rebirth in the realm of subtle form. This is called the Rupa Loka, or Rupa Dhatu. Or Rupa Bhava. So these are the states of existence, subtle realms of existence, realms of rebirth, in which the lower forms of sensual objects have vanished. There still remains visible forms and sounds, and the beings in this realm, it's said, live extremely long lifetimes, even for aeons, and they enjoy blissful, extremely blissful states of mind, because the basic mode of consciousness in these realms is the jhanic level of consciousness. So in the form realm, when the mind is not engaged in other things, it will sort of settle down into the jhanic absorption. And so this is also called the Brahma world, because the beings in this realm are called the Brahma deities, the Brahma gods. And they live extremely long lifespans, blissful, peaceful, free of sensual disturbances. But the drawback from the point of view of the many meditative traditions in the Buddhist time is that there's still this subtle form remaining, which is a kind of defect. And so a lot of the yogis, the rishis, the renunciants in the Buddha's time wanted to go beyond the form realm, beyond the meditations based on form, and to enter these subtler states of mind, which are called the formless meditations, the arupa dhatu, the formless realm of meditation. And so the Visuddhimagga, I took this passage from the Visuddhimagga. So one who wants to develop the base consisting of boundless space, Yeah, so there are 4 levels of the formless meditation: the base of boundless space, the base of boundless consciousness, the base of nothingness, and the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Now, if you remember the story of the Buddha, the life story of the Buddha, when he was still a bodhisattva seeking enlightenment, he went to 2 prominent teachers, meditation teachers of his time. And the first teacher, named Alara, taught him the path to the base of nothingness, the 3rd level of the formless meditations. Then the bodhisattva left Alara and went to another teacher, Uddaka Ramaputta, who taught him the way of practice to the 4th formless meditation, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. So those were the types of meditations or meditative attainments that were the objects of aspiration during the Buddha's time. And the Buddha himself, before his enlightenment, attained those states. Okay, so the Visuddhimagga teaches, or it has a statement about one who wants to develop the base of boundless space. The first formless meditation begins by seeing the danger in the gross types of physical matter in this way, that because of matter or material form, that we are subject to being hit by sticks, struck by knives, that quarrels, brawls, and disputes take place. But that doesn't exist at all in the immaterial, or we could say the formless state. And so you reflect on the dangers of matter, of having material form, and the benefits of being free from material form. And in this way, you enter on the way to dispassion towards material things, for the fading away and cessation of these things. And then you enter upon the 4th jhana in any of the kasina objects, or 9 kasina objects. And then in that way, and then eventually you remove the kasina object, and then you are in the base of boundless space. And so here, so that is sort of explaining how the meditator now turns away from material form and attends to the formless meditations. And then his mind launches out upon it and becomes well settled in it. And his mind is well departed, well developed, well emerged, well liberated, and well detached from form. So that's the escape from form. And as I indicated, in the Buddha's time, amongst the non-Buddhist yogis, renunciants, ascetics, sannyasis, for most of them, that was the aim, the object, to reach the formless absorptions, in the belief that when you reach those attainments, then upon death, the mind is fully liberated, freed from samsara, freed from the round of repeated birth and death. But what the Buddha saw is that through the formless meditations, the formless meditations do not bring complete liberation from the cycle of birth and death, but rather when you master that, the formless meditations are the meditations of arupa vachara, that they pertain to the formless sphere of consciousness, And what happens when you master these meditations without going further, you are reborn in the realm of formless or non-material existence. And you might live in these, there are four levels of non-material existence corresponding to the four formless meditative attainments. There's the level of, or the sphere or realm of boundless space, the realm of boundless consciousness, the realm of nothingness, and the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. And the beings living in these realms don't have any physical bodies, not even subtle physical bodies, and they don't experience sensory objects. They exist purely as minds or streams of consciousness, dwelling for aeons in this stage or state of unruffled equanimity, unruffled tranquility. And the meditators or yogis of the Buddha's time, outside the Buddha sphere, took that to be final liberation. But what the Buddha saw is that these states of non-material, formless existence might last aeons upon aeons, thousands of aeons. But what happens is you reach the end of a lifespan, and then the alarm goes off, and then you fall away from the formless realm of existence. And the next thing you know, your mother is waking you up and saying, Johnny, time for breakfast. You have to go to kindergarten. Get dressed. And then you're going through it again. Then some years later, you have to apply to college. What college do I go to? I'm going to get into college debt. Then you get married. You have marital quarrels, children, troublesome children, all over again. So it's not liberation, the formless meditations. Okay. So now we come to the fifth sphere of liberation, and that is the liberation that's we have a Pali word, very impossible to translate into English. So the Pali word is Sakkaya. Which is a compound of the prefix of the first part, sat, which means true, real, or existing, and kaya, which means body, but not in the narrow sense of the physical body, but as a term that refers to the, call it the collection, the aggregation, or the collection, the combination of the five aggregates. So here it's translated, not so satisfied with it, as personal existence. But now I call it the personal entity, the individual entity. So we have to understand what is meant here is the combination of the five aggregates. And so when you attend to the combination of the five aggregates, to these five aggregates, which constitute our own individual existence, then the mind doesn't launch out upon them, become settled upon them. But then when you attend to the cessation of individual existence, personal existence, which is nibbana, then the mind launches out upon it. So really the cessation of sakkaya, the ending of this individual stream of existence, is nibbana. And so I have some of the ways to reflect, to escape from samsara. So one is to reflect upon the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. And so we have a theme, is 8 bases for developing a sense of urgency. That is reflecting on birth, old age, sickness, and death. And then the 5th is reflecting on the rebirth in the bad destinations in the realm of misery. Then reflecting on all the suffering that one has experienced in the past of one's samsaric wandering, all the suffering that might lie ahead in the future. And then the 8th is reflecting on the trouble of obtaining sufficient food, the struggle to obtain food. So that gives one insight into the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. And then you reflect on the blessings or the wonderful nature of nibbana. And for this, you can look at the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 43, which contains a list of 43, I think it's 44 synonyms for nibbana, called the unconditioned. And then the direct way to gain liberation from sakkaya, to realize nibbana, is through insight into the real nature of the 5 aggregates, contemplating the 5 aggregates: material form, feeling, perception, volitions, consciousness as impermanent, suffering, and non-self, or even more powerfully, looking at the 5 aggregates from 11 angles, as impermanent, suffering, a disease, a tumor, a dart, as misery, affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, as empty, as non-self. And this you find in the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 22, sutta number 122. And so that, we could say, is the escape from personal existence, namely nibbana, the cessation of personal existence. Okay, with this, I think we can, you can just look at the last paragraph on your own, which speaks about how the practitioner is liberated from the different anusayas, the underlying tendencies. Then he has cut off craving, removed the fetter, completely broken through conceit, and reached the end of dukkha, the end of suffering. So those are the 5 elements of escape. Okay, so now we could see if there are some questions, and I'll take them in sequence. Okay, so this will be Samangi. And please try to keep questions concise, clear, and direct. Okay,
Hi.
okay.
Thank you very much. You make things, you bring clarity to things. So one of the things I wanted to ask, because you said this is the last in many studies, when Buddha, when we speak of, for example, I don't know how to say, suatti hotu, it does not mean our illnesses are cured, it brings some heavenly being brings rain or something. But it means that we are able to deal with things with equanimity, with even mind, so that those things don't affect us. Is that correct? Because sometimes, there are stories that when Ratana Sutra brings rain or something like that, and it doesn't fit in with the Dhamma that you are explaining. So
Yeah, well, when you say Sawati Hotu, so what it means, may there be good fortune, may there be safety, may there be security. And so it's with your mind, you're expressing a wish of benevolence. You're expressing a thought, you're formulating a thought of goodwill and expressing it verbally. But there's no short, so you're wishing that a person who is ill will be cured from illness, or people who are facing some kind of disaster will emerge safely from that disaster. So you're cultivating good thoughts within yourself. But certainly for us ordinary people, when we say that, there's no guarantee that it's going to bring about its desired effect. Maybe somebody with a very powerful mind, like when the Buddha says that, or Arahats say that, maybe it can bring about some transformation. But the important point is that when we say that, we're cultivating the good wishes within our own mind. Just as when in our meditation, when we think of loving kindness, may they be well, may they be happy, may they be safe. In effect, that's the same thing as verbally saying Suwati Hotu.
Okay, one more quick question.
Yeah, I think I have to give other people a chance. Yeah, we have to work through. If I finish other people, then I'll come back to you. Okay, Johnny.
Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning.
My question is not 100% related to the topic. Is how can one tell is intention is real escape, or just because of the finest thing in life turns south, and then it's just basically how can tell I am a really want to escape from samsara, or just a mundane loser?
I think we have to face the fact that we're all in some ways, to some extent, mundane losers. So there's always some element of real escapism within all of us. But what I'd say is that we start off maybe with that kind of approach of being mundane losers, following the Dhamma as some kind of escapism. But I say, as our understanding deepens and emerges, and then we see that there are real defects in the things that we're attached to, and real benefits and blessings in these higher states that the Dhamma makes available to us. And then as our understanding becomes clearer, more realistic, more sharper, then that starting point of escapism turns into a real aspiration for deliverance, for liberation based on wisdom. Okay, so that's
Thank
the way
you,
I will
Bhante.
do it. That's okay. Okay, so next will be Yudi.
Yes. Hi, Bhante.
Hi,
Good morning.
good morning.
Okay. My question is in the Rupa Vagana, which is the realm of formless,
Yeah.
right? Do the beings there, once their time is up, can they be reborn as animals, or the lower realms?
Yeah, I think if I remember, I think it's not possible for them to be immediately reborn in the three lower realms.
Oh, okay.
I think they can come down. This was a point dealt with in the Abhidhamma text, but I don't remember the details. But certainly I do remember that they will not go directly from the formless realm to the lower realms. But I think they have to pass through the human realm, or the heavenly realms, or the human realm, but not the lower realms.
Okay. One more quick question. Is
I think, yeah.
okay, go ahead.
First, I have to give other people a chance.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next will be V.
Good morning, Bhante.
Morning.
It's regarding the Arupa jhana. After the neither perception nor non-perception, isn't that there's another arupa jhana, which is the sphere of neither, is a cessation of feeling and perception, nirodha samapatti.
Yeah. Strictly speaking, that is not an arupa jhana. It's a meditative attainment which is higher than the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, but that state has to be attained through the combination of samadhi and panya, or wisdom. And it doesn't create karma leading to rebirth in any realms, but is a state in which feeling and perception and all other mental activities completely cease.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Bhante. Thanks.
Okay, next, Nangi.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, my question is about the so-called Rupa jhana.
Yeah.
There's a discussion whether in the Rupa jhana there is still sense perception, because it's not the same. Sense pleasure and sense perception can be understood in two different ways.
Yeah.
So why is it called Rupa jhana if there still is if there is no sense perception? So why would it be called Rupa jhana?
Yeah. Okay. So there is no perception through the 5 physical sense faculties in the Rupa jhana. So you're not seeing any kind of external physical form, hearing sounds, let alone smelling, tasting, or feeling touch sensations. But there's a mentally visualized object, usually a bright, luminous disc or something like that. So that is called, it's still considered a form of rupa, and that is why it's called the Rupa jhana. So that can be the object, that bright, luminous disc or light. Okay, we'll have to move on. I see a lot of questions and I have limited time. So, Dayani?
Good morning, Bhante.
Good
Yes,
morning.
so this is Rupa Dhatu, is it similar to pure abodes where the anagami will be born to?
Okay, the pure abodes are located within the Rupa Dhatu, within the realm of form, but it's a special section of the realm of form, sort of reserved for non-returners, the pure abodes. And once you get reborn in the pure abodes, then you attain final liberation from that realm without having to be reborn in a lower realm, without having to take rebirth anywhere else.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, Brad Amaronanda.
Thank you, Bhante. Just the phrase the mind launches out. Are there alternative translations for that, or can you say a bit more about that? It strikes me a bit funny, there's something about the phrasing.
I have to look at the Pali to see what it was. It could be simply, maybe I would now say the mind enters upon it.
Yeah,
launches is a little bit odd, but anyway.
Yeah, thank you. That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, then Nabarun in Kolkata. Nabarun?
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is relating to the Sakya, the personal existence. Is there some other reference to that? Because if I look at the first 3, it looks like it is from the right intention group.
Yeah.
And the 4th one is the right concentration. And then if I look at Sakya, and we have the term Sakya Diti, which is again a personality view, which is one of the first fetters. But this seems to be almost like it's almost like going into nibbana. So it's more like conceit, the last fetter. So I'm just trying to get where it relates to in other places in the suttas and in the entire structure.
Yeah, I would have to start looking through other suttas. But let us say the cessation of Sakaya. So whereas the first four are in a way related to samadhi or simply the development of the higher mind, the cessation of Sakaya or the escape from Sakaya comes about through the combined development of some degree of samadhi, concentration, and insight or wisdom. Yeah, as for other suttas where this come, I would have to start doing an investigation and collecting suttas. I didn't do that.
Okay. Thank you.
But really, it's according to the commentary, it's a synonym for nibbana.
Okay.
And
okay.
so
Because it's a term that we haven't seen, like I have read very little, but I haven't seen.
it does occur
before.
from time to time.
Okay.
But I haven't collected the references. Okay, Lee Halfpenny.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, when one reflects on and has total disenchantment with samsara and sensuality,
yeah,
I find myself entering into what is, I guess, spiritual despair. And I guess the root out of that is you basically meditating more and attaining nibbana. I mean, what other than what you've talked about today, when you have total disenchantment from samsara, I tend to go into despair.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And what I would say is that as a counter measure to that, to falling into that despondency, despair, what one does is develop what I would call the joyful meditations as a way of lifting up the spirit. So this would be recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. It could be recollection or the practice of loving kindness, altruistic joy, things that lift up the spirit. And that reminds me, I want to mention, we haven't put the poster up yet on the website, but after the Thanksgiving holiday, I'm going to have a 3-day retreat, online retreat, not in person. From Friday, Saturday, on Sunday, it will be on the theme of finding joy in the wholesome. And these will deal with it'll be a very relaxed retreat, not intense one, with a number of breaks, discussion, talks, and so on. But we'll be doing the meditations that lift up the spirit, the recollections on Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, on the precepts and generosity, loving kindness and altruistic joy, and gratitude, the meditation on gratitude. So within this coming week, I think the poster will come up on the Baus website, so keep your eyes open for it. Okay, I could take one more question now, then I do have to go up for the meal. So this is from Damon in Washington. Are you there? Okay, please.
Yes, thank you. Bhante, so I want to know which one of these escapes could be helpful with fear of death, which I keep coming up against. I was thinking about the personal existence one, but none of them seem really on the money.
What I would say is to counteract fear of death, to do some of these positive, uplifting meditations, particularly if you're observing the precepts and in any way practicing generosity, you do the reflection, even just short periods, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, reflecting on your own observance of the precepts, reflecting on your practice of generosity and rejoicing in that. And that lifts up the spirit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, another thing one can do, again, is recollection of the Buddha is very helpful, because then you get a sense of confidence and trust, sort of like, supporting you. as one enters the death process. So a lot of people do regularly the recollection of the Buddha as a preparation for death. Okay, I'm going to
Very
have to
good.
go up for the meal. I'm sorry, some people had other questions, but just can't take them now. So we will end with the sharing of the merits. Before I do this, we're coming to the end of the fives. So I'm going to jump around and find short, interesting suttas in the fives just to look at very briefly. Because there are a lot of short, interesting ones that don't need much elaboration, just have to sort of call attention to them. Okay, so let us end with sharing the merits. And this should be another basis for joy, is thinking of our own merits and then sharing them with others. So we share the merits with the Dhamma protecting devas, the dragon spirits, and with all sentient beings. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu sasanang. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu desanang. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangra kantu mang parang. Dukkha patachani dukkha baya patachani baya soka patachani soka antu sabepi panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all beings also be thus. And then we can go sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu,
Thank you,
sadhu.
Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. And about to Bhante. Thank you, Bhante. About to Bhante.
Okay, okay,
Thank you, Bhante.
Nirvan
okay,
Sarnai
okay.
Bhante. Namo
Thank you,
Buddhaya.
Okay,
Bhante.
take care.
Take
Okay,
care
take
of
care.
your health,
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante.
Okay, okay,
Thank you, Bhante.
okay,
We're
take
looking
care.
forward to the retreat, Bhante.
Okay, I'll try to get the poster up. This.
Thank you very much. Wonderful,
Yeah, that's great,
Bhante.
Bhante. Thank you so much. Have a good meal. Have a great
Okay,
week.
thank you. Okay,
Thank
bye bye.
you. Nirvan
Okay,
Sarnai.
I'm going
Bye.
to close down now.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.